Hey everybody, the Lazy Gardener here. It's August 17th. We're here for our August tour. We did a June one, we did a July one. Here's August. Let's take a look at how things have progressed and let's get started. Okay, same as before, we're starting with the carrots. As I've said before, I planted these too densely, but that's not completely by accident. And what you'll do is we harvest around the outside. And as we harvest, there gets to be more and more space between the carrots, and we've been getting bigger and bigger carrots. And we can harvest carrots all season on a single planting this way, and that's the lazy way. So, all right, let's look at the leeks. The leeks is like one of my big disasters this year. As I've said before, they all bolted or started to flower, and they're not supposed to do that. Leeks are supposed to flower biannually on a 2-year schedule, and I only planted these this year. And when they go to flower, they die off here instead of giving you those big leeks that you're accustomed to in the, in the supermarket. What happens is they start to bulb up and they look more like a garlic. If I kind of harvest down a little, you'll be a leek bulb in here, and then we can just eat that. But you only get very little material compared to what we should have if these hadn't bolted. It's okay. Just plant more and start over again. Over here we have the tomatoes. Tomatoes are still doing really well. And if you watch my earlier videos, I was talking about I had conceived of a new kind of caging method, and I wanted it to be cheap, very cheap. This is very inexpensive. This costs less than the price of it would to do these cages, and the cages are relatively inexpensive, all things considered. So this really works great. It's very, very, very sturdy. I know it looks like it wobbles a little, and I could easily reinforce this. I'm still playing around with the design a little, but the key is the components that I'm using are designed to be the cheapest PVC parts, because the connectors are what get you in terms of the price. Anyway, the tomatoes are doing great. And you can see here, or over here is a good one. This one is over 7 feet tall, using this double caging method with the pole and the 2 cages and the zip ties. This holds great. We had 30-mile-an-hour winds with up to 60-mile-an-hour gusts. I came out here, this thing wasn't knocked over. It wasn't even so much budged out of the ground. And this wasn't even actually here at the time. So I wish if I had gotten these in earlier in the year, I think the tomatoes would fare even better. But they're working great. Here, and we can just kind of get that inside, and it's already supported. Okay, come on down here. Let's go look at potatoes. These are some late season potatoes I planted. These are going better than expected. They're just starting to flower. They look beautiful. Actually quite pretty. These are some purple potatoes, so you can actually even see purpling in the leaves of the potato plants. And if these look similar to tomatoes, that's because potatoes and tomatoes are like brother and sister. They're both in the same family. Very, very closely related. And some potato species even have something called potato leaves, because the leaves will look almost identical. I could probably show you that over there. Over here we have beans. This is where my garlic was in these 4 boxes, and I took it out and I rotated them into something else so that the box could stay productive. We did harvest most of the string beans that were ready, but you can see here that there's another batch that's readying up really soon. There are tons on here. These are dried, so that's great for the lazy gardener. Dried beans, you just plant them, you water them, you have your automated watering system, and then at the end you go harvest them. You don't have to do anything to take care of them. You don't have to come in and look for the ripe ones. They'll die back, and you'll be able to just find dried beans on there. Same with this, more dried beans. Look great. These are these are actually Portuguese beans. They're similar to the Italian long beans. You can see these are going to get quite a bit bigger, and they're delicious, either fresh or in soups. Over here, we have some tomatoes. I did this easy caging, and this was kind of like a prototype. The tomatoes, these ones are been hit by what I would call late blight. It's going to take the tomatoes down. All tomatoes die from blight. It's just a matter of time. And I mean, I don't take routine. I'm not a big sprayer, because spraying is a lot of work, and that's not the lazy way. So the best solution to this is, I'll show you down there, is you just plant more tomato plants a little later in the season, and I'll get tomatoes all season, even if these die off completely. Here we have a cucumber, a volunteer. It just came up in this box. It wanted to be here, so I wasn't going to refuse it. And if you get down there, you'll see there's a cucumber. You're not going to see a lot of ripe fruits on the vegetables, or ripe fruits or vegetables on the tour, because generally those are harvested, but you'll see ripening stuff. This one isn't super productive yet, but I think it's about to really take off. Over here we have, these were where the potatoes were. Those have been harvested. This box is now going to get ready for garlic. And next year I'll harvest garlic out of this box, but I'm going to plant that in about a little under 2 months. But we want to keep these boxes working. Over here we have our green pepper section. You can see lots of green peppers. There's various colors in here. I think there's a red one under here, if you can catch it. And then over here we have habaneros and cayennes. And again, the ripe ones have been taken off, but you can see if you shoot under there, there should be lots of ripening fruit you can see. I'm going to make some good hot sauce with this stuff. I make a habanero hot sauce and a cayenne hot sauce. And just to show you these cabbages from the earlier video, they basically have been harvested. There's a little left guy, a runt that was stuck under the other ones, and we'll see what we get from that. All right, so let's go look at the lower garden now. All right, this is the lower garden. I mean, it may be misleading to call it the lower garden because it's only about 30 feet away from the upper garden or the middle orchard, but it's just helpful for the designation for the zones. Okay, onions were here. We took out the onions, had a great harvest. Did really well this year, and I replaced it with some broccoli plants. It's a little hot for the broccoli. It's a cool weather crop, but needs to get used to this weather. I started those indoors, and they look like they're doing really well. Here's some older broccoli that's still giving us to protect it from the moss. I just don't have enough protective equipment to protect the new ones, but eventually those, I'll move that over. Here we got soybeans. If you can see under here, again, a lot of the ripe produce has been harvested, but here, get a shot of this. There's still a lot of soybeans left to go. Probably need to harvest those tonight. These were those Italian long beans. You can check out the earlier videos if you want to see. You can check out the earlier videos, but this had a lot of beans on it. It did phenomenal. It just got bags and bags of beans off of this. And what's left, I'll either save for seeds or you can get some soup beans. It's still giving a little. This is my late blight prevention program. This is those 10 more plants that I put in down here, and they're just starting to give me tomatoes. So these are going to go for the rest of the season, and that's how I'll have tomatoes all season. And this way I don't have to spray constantly. It's just, again, a lot of work and cost. Over here we have those cabbages that bolted. They're still going. We can take leaves off of them. These are great for soups. This is Brussels sprouts. I'm still holding hope that maybe I'll get Brussels sprouts out of it, but I did plant some more. I'll show you over there just in case. More broccoli. This does need to be harvested. Cut it back. It's very late. You're not going to get a lot of broccoli. You're going to get mostly leaves from this, but the leaves, actually, broccoli leaves are delicious. Sauteed in soups and any of that. This is actually a very tender type cabbage. Better than most cabbages, in my opinion. These are my shelling beans, and they gave off a small first round. So, I mean, I'm telling you about my successes. I wouldn't say this is necessarily a failure, but it was a very light first flush. A flush is a round, and then it ripens them all off before it goes again. Here you can see one of the last of the ones left here, and that's almost done because I'm saving these for beans to be taken out. They'll be very large beans. Instead of taking dried beans and rehydrating them, we put these in the freezer and they blow dried beans away. It looks like I'll get another flush, hopefully. Over here, we've got some more cabbages. These are Brussels sprouts, actually. I'm just giving them a little protection from the sun today. You can even see the broccoli is a little wilting, but the beets were wilting, so I put this on. But they look really good. And you can see over there is a couple of cabbages as well. This shade cloth is great. What this does is this will be rated by a percentage of how much light blocks out. So this is 70% shade cloth, meaning that 30% of the light is blocked out. And that'll keep those plants happy, those cool weather crops in this hot weather. It's about 80 degrees. Over here we got some watermelons. And back there some pumpkins. Let's see if we can show you some veggies. The weeds got a little out of control here. That happens sometimes when you're a lazy gardener. But that's a beautiful watermelon. I've gotten a bunch already. And most of them were good. Over here we have, like I said, the pumpkins. A lot of the ripe ones have been harvested, but there's a butternut right there if you see it. If you can come back here a little farther, You can see these really two big ones back there. And they're just about ready. And those make some beautiful pumpkin. It's just beautiful orange flesh inside. Great for soups and pies. Over here, we have what's left of the cantaloupe. It's still hanging in there. I still haven't gotten one from this, but it is trying its hardest over here, if you can show that. And I do have hopes though, because I did plant another plant, which I think I showed on my last video, my other tour, and it's doing really well. I'll show you that. Last thing over here is my zucchini. You can see the spider plant. It's just a volunteer too. I really like this plant, so I just leave it. Just blooms all season. But over here, the zucchinis are still going, still giving me zucchinis here. Trail that back. I've really been working hard at what we call defoliating, which is pulling off old leaves, broken leaves, moldy leaves. And I have to say, this has been very successful. This is the first year I've really been very aggressive like that. I've taken wheelbarrows of leaves off of these squash, but they just keep producing and producing, so I highly recommend that. Okay, we got one more place to go. All right, so here we have the what I call the patio garden. It's just a couple of boxes in the greenhouse, but this is that cantaloupe that I planted up here. It seems to be extremely happy away from the area where I normally plant my squash plants. So I'm definitely going to do a better job at rotating, but you can see it is taking over this box. And we had potatoes and beets in here earlier this year, so really making efficient use of the boxes really helps to be on top of that. Here's some late potatoes I also planted here. These are not doing as well as the ones that I showed you down here, but overall they're doing really well. They're flowering, and that means they're starting to form potatoes, and that's great. And if they look fallen over, it's just, again, it's that vining habit. They get tall and they fall over, and this box doesn't have any railings anyway. Here we had earlier potatoes. I harvested these. I wasn't really happy with the quantity that I got out of here. That just happens. That's why I plant a lot of potatoes. Some harvests are better than others, and I'm still refining the craft, right? We got New Zealand spinach over there. That is delicious in soup, so we'll freeze that for some of that for the winter. A couple of potted tomatoes that are now just starting to give another kind of like little defense against mold and blight. Just distribute your plants around, spread them out. And the greenhouse. And the greenhouse is a little exhausted. It was extremely hot. We've just had an unbelievable heat wave. It's got to be almost a month of really unusually high weather. No climate change there. And yeah, here the tomatoes are still doing great. They're starting to set fruit now. They just weren't going to set it in that heat, and this plant got exhausted, but it's got a bunch of cucumbers in there, and there's arugula coming up all by itself. I don't know if I'll keep that or I'll just plant some, but all in all, that's the tour. Glad you came along, and good luck and good gardening.